88-year-old Oscar Erickson is glad he's got some help while traveling to Washington, D.C.
I'm glad he's taking me around because I'd be so lost.
Help from 85-year-old brother Gus.
I got a bad knee, but other than that, pretty good.
And 73-year-old brother Gary.
We had cousins, and they got to go together, so we said, if they could go together, we're going to go together.
But this wasn't your average family bonding trip.
Gary, he kind of pushed it, and I said, yeah, I'll go.
The Erickson brothers from the Wisconsin Rapids area all traveled together on the 25th Never Forgotten Honor Flight to D.C. last Monday. The brothers come from a big family of 11 kids.
We had our little fights, but I mean, nothing to hold over the next day.
Oscar served in the Air Force as a mechanic during the Korean War. Gus, who also served during the Korean War, was a member of the United States Coast Guard.
Well, I liked it, yeah. I didn't like sea-doo that well, but when we hit port, hey, bottoms up.
And the youngest brother on the trip, Gary, served in the Air Force stateside during the Vietnam War.
That's Washington Monument.
Being in the service for the Ericksons is truly all in the family.
3 in the Air Force, 1 in the Coast Guard, and 1 in the Navy.
But this trip wasn't only for Gary, Gus, and Oscar, but also for another brother, buried right here at Arlington National Cemetery, at a grave the brothers hadn't been to yet.
My older brother, Marvin, he was in the Navy during World War II, and then he enlisted in the Air Force. So with his Navy and Air Force time, he had almost 21 years.
The thanks these vets get make the long day worth it.
It feels nice and I shake your hand, and so many of them today already, oh my goodness.
Thanks for 3 brothers, happy to serve the country they love. We're covering the news in D.C. Mary O'Connell, Newswatch 12. Every honor flight features plenty of surprises for veterans.
It was just a terrific surprise.
But you'd be hard-pressed to find a better surprise than the one 87-year-old Walt Andrus got on the 25th Never Forgotten Honor Flight. Walt traveled from Wausau to Washington, D.C. with his son, John.
Just such an honor and a privilege to be able to share this experience with my dad.
Walt's time in the service looked a little different than his fellow soldiers. Walt served as a first lieutenant dental officer in Korea during the Korean War era.
I had just graduated from Marquette Dental School, and at that time the doctor's draft was on. Rather than wait for Uncle Sam to come and get me, I joined the Army.
Walt calls his time in Korea actually a wonderful experience.
I wasn't any big hero.
But Walt's experience in Korea was different from what family friend Song Gotianko saw.
I'm from Korea, and my grandfather and his whole family came from North Korea to South in the seeking freedom.
Eventually, Song and her family immigrated to San Antonio, where she herself served in the U.S. Army. Song doubts her grandparents would have survived life in North Korea, meaning she wouldn't exist without the help of people like Walt. Song has known the Andrus family for about 10 years and calls Walt a second dad, but she hadn't seen him in a few years. So with the help of his son, Walt was about to get the surprise of a lifetime when Song showed up in D.C. to give her second dad a long-awaited hug.
She's such a wonderful girl. I feel like she's a daughter.
Many soldiers, just like Walt, felt they weren't heroes after coming back from war. But in the eyes of one woman,
It's wonderful for you to come here.
Walt will always be a hero to her.
If it weren't for heroes like Walter and so many heroes who have given up so much for my country, I wouldn't be here today.
Honoring our nation's heroes, one surprise at a time. We're covering the news in D.C. Mary O'Connell, Newswatch 12. You could call World War II vet Al Pellet Jr. a ladies' man.
What time can I date you?
Or even the life of the party. But mostly, his family will tell you he's a hero.
He fought in Iwo Jima in World War II, and this is very important to him.
Al asked his son-in-law, Dave, to travel with him on the never-forgotten honor flight to Washington, D.C. The unlikely duo has become pretty close in the near 14 years they've known each other.
We have become very close buddies. There's 30 years difference, but he is one of my best buddies.
Al and Dave live in Stevens Point, a long way from the island of Iwo Jima, where Al served in the Navy in 1945. Al worked as a CB, or in the construction battalion, working to set up warehouses.
I felt like I did what I was supposed to do.
save my country.
The Battle of Iwo Jima was one of the bloodiest during the war, leaving thousands dead. Al vividly remembers the experience during and after the battle. So getting to see the memorial honoring those who had fallen and knowing he was lucky to be able to see it meant a lot.
We did a good job for one thing. It was a dirty job. They were dug in. You had to dig them out. We lost more casualties there than the Japanese did. When you seen the flag go up, it was quite a thrill.
Al's family said he had seen some horrific things overseas and still deals with PTSD after all these years. But being able to be there with Al to help with that healing means a lot to Al's best buddy.
He could have chose a lot of people because he has a lot of family. He asked me to come along, and I'm very proud of that.
Al may be getting older.
I feel like 190.
But the thanks he's gotten after all these years will never really get old.
It means that they appreciated what we've done. Yes, it's a good feeling.
We're covering the news in Washington, D.C. Mary O'Connell, Newswatch 12. The plane carrying 95 veterans to Washington, D.C.
I flew it on the computer.
looks a little different than the jet 81-year-old Dan Vladeck worked on in the Air Force.
The airplane that I worked on, there was only one guy.
Dan worked at an air base in Germany as an aircraft jet mechanic and crew chief of a fighter interceptor. He and his crew patrolled the Iron Curtain after the Korean War.
Like a show of force. We had Russian MiGs diving over the border. And when they didn't want to go back, we scrambled our aircraft to chase them back.
It was a job Dan calls important after the war.
It saved us from communism, basically. You kept the Russians where they belong, and that was great. Everybody's free. Look, we do what we want, go where we want. Can't beat that.
But as important as that job was, Dan was skeptical of coming on the honor flight, saying he didn't feel like he deserved it.
You know, you look around and all these guys, they get, they were in the Second War, Vietnam and Korea, and I was in between. I was, after the Korean War, and I feel a little guilty.
Dan's not alone in that feeling. Many vets just think they're lucky to have survived their wars. But when the vets stepped off that plane, in a big sea of yellow, those guilty feelings turned into something else.
When we got off that plane, I was overwhelmed, really. I couldn't get over it. Everybody, clapping and wanting to shake your hand, give you a hug. That was great. And all day long it's been like that.
To these people, it doesn't really matter where people like Dan served, when or how, but that they gave it all to protect the country they love.
People that you've never seen before in your life, they come over, shake your hand, give you a hug. It's good.
That makes them a hero. We're covering the news in D.C. Mary O'Connell, Newswatch 12. Blumberg is no stranger to the spotlight. And he's got a laugh you could recognize from a mile away. But last week, Ed got to take a back seat and enjoy the sights of our nation's capital.
It was beyond my wildest dreams. I wouldn't have even imagined something like this.
Though he walked circles around most people during the day, so you really wouldn't know it, Ed's got a few years on the other vets.
I don't know what you're supposed to feel at 96.
Turning 96 years old this December made Ed the oldest vet traveling on the honor flight last Monday. Ed served as a squad leader with the Marines in the Pacific during World War II.
When you have a squad, you become papa of a squad. You have a family. You're responsible for each one of them, and I was happy I didn't lose any of them.
But every day since Ed came home, he's battled with the question, why me?
Why? When I was discharged, that was it. Why I got home and so many didn't. And I was reading in 2 Corinthians that said that one died for all, then all were dead. That they who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and rose again. That's been my life.
The National World War II Museum says every 3 minutes we lose the memories of a World War II veteran passing away. And by 2036, the VA thinks there won't be any surviving World War II veterans left. So Ed's daughter Leanne makes it a part of her mission to share her dad's experience
This is my older brother.
of serving the country he loves with her family.
We kind of are so accustomed to what we have. We really forget the sacrifice it took for us to be where we are today. And it troubles me that if we don't hold on to that, what is going to happen to us in the future?
Leanne calls her dad selfless and that he wanted other vets to go on the flight before him, but this day was worth it, honoring one more World War II veteran.
It's beyond my explanation. I can probably never get over it.
While there's still time for these American heroes. We're covering the news in D.C. Mary O'Connell, Newswatch 12.